Hello, I'm Catherine Shirey, a graduate student at the University of West Georgia, and today I'm going to be talking about differentiation, because in a standardized education world, it really makes a difference when it comes to meeting the needs of our diverse classrooms. So what do you think of when you hear the word differentiation or the words differentiated instruction? Are you like the teachers in Miss Osborne's article, How Differentiation Became a Dirty Word to Teachers? Do you feel like it's just a trend that we are forced to embrace to keep our jobs and keep our bosses happy? Or are you like the largest proponent for differentiation, Miss Carol Ann Tomlinson, where you believe it's simply teachers attending to the learning needs of particular students or groups of students rather than teaching a class as though all individuals are basically alike? Well, Diane Heacox, in the book In Making Differentiation a Habit, says differentiation is what we do to enable more students to meet their state standards. And I believe as educators, that is what we all want to do. We want our students to meet the standards to be successful in school. She also goes on to say that differentiation is not a set of strategies that we can just plug in randomly. It is a planful process. So if it's not strategies we can just plug in, what is all this professional development around differentiation? So we have to start with the plan. When you are planning your lesson, you need to use data to drive what you're doing. You need to know your students in order to plan adequately for your students. I think as educators, as adults, as humans, we can all say there are not a single student who is the same as the other. Now, during our plan, we have the lesson ready and we are giving the lesson, and it could go flawlessly, or the data could have been skewed just a little bit, and little Billy is not doing so well in his ability group that he's in. And you realize that, so you adapt. You move Billy over here to the other group. Or maybe you realize that Susie isn't doing so great with what you gave her, so you switch it up. Or maybe you realize that David got done way faster than you expected. Maybe the day the data was taken, it was a bad day for him. So you adapt. You planned, and then you adapt. If you had not planned, instead of adapting, you would be reacting. And then after the lesson is done, you reflect. What worked? What didn't work? What needs to change? What needs to stay the same? So, did I just tell you that you need to look at every component of every lesson for every student and make everything individualized? No, I did not just tell you that. And we'll get to that shortly, so I'll help you out with that. But before we get to that, we need to talk about the elements of differentiated instruction. First element is content. The content is what we intend on the students learning. What do they need to learn? What do they need to access for this information? And then it's the process. These are the activities that the students are going to be engaged in order to make sense of the content. And then the product, which is the outcome or the example of the learning. How is the student going to show that they mastered this subject? And another element, if you will, of differentiated instruction is the learning environment. This tends to get overlooked. But when you are reflecting in your lesson and you're planning for your lesson, you need to look at how your classroom feels. Is it set up the best way it can be set up to encourage learning? Okay, so hopefully by this point in the presentation, you're not even more confused about what differentiation is than when you started. But in order to help you, we're going to go over what exactly differentiation is and some examples or non-examples of it. First, you have to know your learners. You have to know your students. So you can do this by assessing them personally, them academically. You need to have adjustable assignments or tiered assignments, scaffolding assignments. Your questioning strategy should be different. Are they multiple choice? Are they essay, true and false, matching? Do they have 3 choices, 2 choices, 4 choices? And the way you're approaching the curriculum. Now, some non-examples of differentiation is following the accommodations in an IEP. That's not differentiation. That is following a federally binding document that tells you what you have to do. Now, an example of differentiation would be using the data to group students in either mixed or same ability groups so that you can either do enrichment activities, remediation activities, or even peer tutoring activities. Another example would be flexible seating options. Maybe Billy is that student who, is ADHD, maybe a touch of it, but he's not on medication. But if he's able to move or wiggle in, say, one of those seats that look like a ball, his brain can stay engaged while his body moves. A non-example of differentiation would be sending Billy out of the room because he's distracting the other students. Another example of differentiation would be Susie has a hard time keeping up with note-taking sometimes. She tries. She really does try. So you give her fill-in-the-blank notes and tell her as long as she attempts the notes and she is engaged during class, at the end of class you will trade her incompleted or incorrect notes with completed and correct notes. An example of a product that is differentiated would be, well, what do you need to know someone mastered the subject in math? Do you need 20 problems answered correctly, or can Melanie over there just do 10 questions and you know she hasn't mastered? Do you need a essay typed out, or could David do a screenplay or do some type of artistic assignment? Those are all things to look into with differentiation. Now, with what overwhelms teachers are thinking that they have to differentiate for every student, every time, every assignment, every day. And that is not the fact. We're still, if you will, teaching to the middle and then differentiating so that our advanced students can continue to advance and not feel bored. And so that our students with disabilities can have a sense of accomplishment and bridge the gap between the other students and still have access to the standards and even master the standards.